The starship Celestial Wanderer drifted silently through the vast expanse of space, its hull glinting under the light of a distant sun. Aboard the ship, Alina Voss sat in the dimly lit control room, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. Her auburn hair was tied back in a loose braid, and her hazel eyes reflected the glow of the screens. She was a woman of science, driven by curiosity and a thirst for discovery. Her mission was simple: study alien cultures and bring back knowledge that could unite humanity with the rest of the galaxy. But fate had other plans. A sudden jolt rocked the ship, sending Alina tumbling from her seat. Alarms blared as the lights flickered. "What the hell?" she muttered, scrambling to her feet. The ship's eye, a calm female voice, echoed through the cabin. "Warning. Gravitational anomaly detected. Engines failing. Prepare for emergency landing." Alina's heart raced as she gripped the console. "Where are we?" she demanded. "Unknown planet," the A replied. "Atmosphere breathable. Initiating descent." The ship shuddered violently as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Alina clenched her teeth, her knuckles white as she held on. Outside the viewport, the sky burned with streaks of orange and red. The ground rushed up to meet them, and with a deafening crash, the Celestial Wanderer came to a halt. Smoke filled the cabin, and Alina coughed as she struggled to unbuckle herself. "Life support?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Functional, but limited," the eye responded. "External environment hostile. Recommend staying inside." Alina grabbed her portable scanner and a survival kit. "Not an option," she said, slinging the kit over her shoulder. "I need to find help." She stepped out of the ship and into an alien world. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flora, and the sky was a deep shade of violet. Towering trees with bioluminescent leaves surrounded her, casting an eerie glow. In the distance, she heard the low growl of an unknown creature. "Great," she muttered. "Just great." As she ventured deeper into the forest, Alina's scanner picked up unusual energy signatures. "This place is teeming with life," she whispered, her curiosity piqued despite the danger. But before she could investigate further, a shadow moved in the trees. She froze, her hand instinctively reaching for the stun gun at her side. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice steady but laced with tension. The shadow stepped into the light, revealing a tall, muscular figure. His skin was a deep shade of cobalt, with faint silver markings that shimmered like starlight. His eyes, a piercing shade of gold, locked onto hers. He wore armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and in his hand he held a weapon that hummed with energy. "Human," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "You are not supposed to be here." Alina raised her hands, showing she meant no harm. "My ship crashed. I need help." The alien warrior tilted his head, studying her. "You are alone?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "Just me." He stepped closer, and Alina felt a strange pull, as if an invisible force was drawing her to him. His gaze softened, and he extended a hand. "Come with me. It is not safe here." She hesitated, but the sincerity in his eyes convinced her. As she reached out to take his hand, their fingers brushed, and something extraordinary happened. A burst of golden light erupted from a device on his wrist, illuminating the forest. The alien warrior's eyes widened in shock as the device began to crackle and spark. "What's happening?" Alina asked, her voice filled with panic. "The Soulmate Detector," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It has never done this before." Before either of them could react, the device exploded in a shower of sparks. The force of the blast knocked them both to the ground. Alina groaned as she sat up, her ears ringing. What the hell was that? The warrior stared at his wrist, where the device had been. Now, only a faint golden glow remained. "Impossible," he murmured. "A human, triggering the detector." Alina frowned. "What are you talking about?" He looked at her, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of awe and confusion. "My name is Kale Durin," he said. And you are my soulmate.
The golden glow from Kale's wrist pulsed faintly as he led Elena through the dense, bioluminescent forest. The air was thick with the scent of alien flowers, and the ground beneath their feet felt soft, almost spongy. Elena's mind raced with questions, but the intensity in Kale's expression kept her silent. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, as if he were trying to unravel the mystery of her very existence. "Where are you taking me?" she finally asked, her voice breaking the eerie silence of the forest. "To the capital," Kale replied, his tone firm but not unkind. "The elders must know of this. What happened between us, it has never occurred before. Not with a human." Elena frowned. "What did happen? That device on your wrist, what does it do?" Kale hesitated, his golden eyes flickering with uncertainty. "It is a soulmate detector," he explained. "Every Zorathian carries one. It identifies our perfect match, the one who complements us in every way. But it has never reacted to a non-Zorathian. Until you." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "So you're saying, I'm your soulmate?" Kale's jaw tightened. "That is what the detector indicated. But the elders will demand proof. They will not accept this without a bonding ritual." "A bonding ritual?" Elena echoed, her voice tinged with unease. "What does that involve?" Kale glanced at her, his expression softening. "It is a series of trials designed to test the strength of our connection. If we pass, the bond will be recognized. If we fail," he trailed off, his gaze darkening. "If we fail?" Elena pressed. "If we fail," Kale said quietly, "the bond will be severed. And that is not something I wish to experience." Elena swallowed hard, her mind racing. This was all happening too fast. One moment, she was a scientist on a mission to study alien cultures, the next, she was being told she was the soulmate of a warrior from a species she barely understood. But despite her doubts, she couldn't deny the strange pull she felt toward Kale. It was as if an invisible thread connected them, drawing her closer to him with every step. The Zorathian capital was a sight to behold. Towering spires of crystalline material rose into the violet sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of the twin suns. The streets were alive with activity, filled with Zorathians of all shapes and sizes. Their cobalt skin and golden eyes made them seem almost otherworldly, and Elena couldn't help but feel out of place among them. As they approached the grand hall, a group of elders emerged to greet them. Their robes shimmered with intricate patterns, and their eyes bore into Elena with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Kale Dirine," one of the elders said, his voice deep and commanding. "You bring a human before us. Explain yourself." Kale bowed his head respectfully. "Elders, this is Elena Voss. Her ship crashed on our world, and when we touched, my soulmate detector, it exploded." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the elders. "Exploded," another elder repeated, her golden eyes narrowing. "That is impossible. The detector is infallible." "And yet it happened," Kale insisted. "I believe she is my soulmate." The elders exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the first elder spoke again. "Very well. We shall conduct the bonding ritual. If what you say is true, the trials will prove it." Elena's stomach churned. "What kind of trials?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The elder's gaze shifted to her, and for a moment, she felt as if he could see straight into her soul. "The trials are designed to test the strength of your connection," he explained. "They will challenge you physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Only those who are truly bonded can succeed." Elena glanced at Kale, who gave her a reassuring nod. "We will face them together," he said. The first trial took place in a vast chamber filled with swirling mist. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the walls seemed to pulse with a faint, rhythmic glow. Elena and Kale stood at the center, their hands clasped together. The trial of unity, one of the elders announced. You must navigate the labyrinth as one. If you become separated, you fail. Before Elena could respond, the ground beneath them shifted, and the mist thickened, obscuring their vision. She tightened her grip on Kale's hand, her heart pounding. Stay close, he murmured, his voice calm but firm. They moved through the labyrinth, their steps in perfect sync. The mist seemed to play tricks on Elena's mind, conjuring illusions that threatened to pull them apart. But every time she felt herself faltering, Kale was there, his presence grounding her. You're doing well, he said softly, his golden eyes meeting hers. Trust me. Elena nodded, her trust in him growing with every step. Together, they emerged from the labyrinth, the mist clearing to reveal the elders waiting for them. You have passed the first trial, the elder said, his tone approving. But there are more to come. The second trial was more intimate. They were led to a chamber filled with glowing orbs that floated in the air like fireflies. The trial of harmony, the elder explained. You must attune your energies to one another. Only then will the orbs respond. Elena and Kale stood facing each other, their hands resting on each other's shoulders. The orbs swirled around them, their light flickering in response to their presence. Focus on me, Kale said, his voice low and soothing. Let your energy flow with mine. Elena closed her eyes, allowing herself to relax. She could feel Kale's energy, warm and steady, intertwining with her own. It was a strange sensation, but not unpleasant. As their energies merged, the orbs began to glow brighter, their light filling the chamber. When they opened their eyes, the elders were watching them with a mixture of awe and approval. You have passed the second trial, one of them said. But the final trial will be the most challenging. The final trial took place in a vast arena, where a crowd of Zorathians had gathered to watch. Kale's rival, Valen, stood at the center, his golden eyes burning with jealousy. The trial of strength, the elder announced. You must face Valen in combat. Only by working together can you defeat him. Elena's heart sank. Combat? I'm not a warrior. Kale placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You don't have to be. We'll face him together. As the battle began, Elena relied on her quick thinking and resourcefulness, while Kale used his strength and skill. Together, they outmaneuvered Valen, their bond giving them an edge he couldn't match. When Valen finally conceded, the crowd erupted in cheers. The elders approached, their expressions solemn. You have passed all the trials, the lead elder said. The bond between you is true. It shall be recognized. As the words sank in, Elena felt a surge of emotion. She looked at Kale, her heart swelling with a strange, newfound connection. What happens now? She asked. Kale smiled, his golden eyes filled with warmth. Now, he said, we begin our journey together.
The celebration in the Zorathian capital was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. The streets were alive with music and light, the air filled with the scent of exotic foods and the sound of laughter. The Zorathians, once wary of her presence, now regarded her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. She was no longer just a human who had crashed on their world. She was Kale Durin's soulmate, a title that carried weight and significance. But amidst the festivities, Elena couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. The trials had been intense, and while she and Kale had emerged victorious, she knew their journey was far from over. The look in Valen's eyes as he conceded defeat had been one of pure hatred, and she had no doubt that he would seek revenge. Kale, ever perceptive, noticed her tension. "What troubles you?" he asked, his voice low as they stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Elena sighed, leaning against the railing. "It's Valen," she admitted. "I don't trust him. He's not going to let this go." Kale's expression darkened. "Valen is proud and stubborn," he said, "but he will not act against the elder's decision. To do so would be to defy our laws." And yet, Elena countered, "He challenged us during the trials. He's not afraid to bend the rules if it suits him. Kale was silent for a moment, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. You are right to be cautious, he said finally. I will keep a close watch on him. The next morning, Alina awoke to find the city shrouded in an eerie silence. The usual hum of activity was absent, replaced by an unsettling stillness. She dressed quickly and made her way to the grand hall, where Kale was already waiting. Something's wrong, he said as soon as he saw her. Valen has disappeared. Alina's heart sank. What do you mean, disappeared? He left the city last night, Kale explained. No one knows where he went, but he took weapons and supplies with him. Alina's mind raced. He's planning something, she said. We need to find him before he causes trouble. Kale nodded. I've already sent scouts to track him, but I fear he may have gone to the Forbidden Zone. The Forbidden Zone, Alina repeated. What's that? A dangerous region of our world, Kale said grimly. It is said to be filled with ancient ruins and powerful artifacts. Many who enter never return. Alina's eyes widened. And you think Valen went there? It is the only place he could go to gather the strength he needs to challenge us, Kale replied. If he finds what he's looking for, he could pose a serious threat. Without hesitation, Alina and Kale set out for the Forbidden Zone. The journey was treacherous, the landscape growing increasingly hostile as they ventured further from the city. The air grew thick with a strange metallic scent, and the ground was littered with jagged rocks and twisted vegetation. As they approached the edge of the Forbidden Zone, they were met by a group of scouts. We found Valen's trail, one of them reported. He entered the ruins. Kale's jaw tightened. Then we have no time to waste. The ruins were a labyrinth of crumbling stone and glowing crystals, their surfaces etched with ancient symbols. The air was heavy with an oppressive energy, and Alina felt a chill run down her spine as they stepped inside. Stay close, Kale warned, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon. This place is dangerous. They moved cautiously through the ruins, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The deeper they went, the more intense the energy became, until it felt as if the very air was alive with power. Finally, they'd reached a large chamber, its walls lined with glowing crystals. In the center of the room stood Valen, his back to them. In his hands, he held a strange, pulsating artifact. Valen, Kale called out, his voice firm. This ends now. Valen turned to face them, his golden eyes blazing with fury. You think you can stop me? He snarled. With this artifact, I will destroy your bond and claim what is rightfully mine. Alina stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Valen, this isn't the way. The bond between Kale and me is real. No artifact can change that. Valen laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think I care about your bond? You are nothing but a human, an outsider. You do not belong here. Before anyone could react, Valen raised the artifact, its light growing brighter and brighter until it filled the room. A surge of energy erupted from it, knocking Alina and Kale off their feet. When the light faded, Valen was gone, leaving only the faint echo of his laughter behind. Back in the city, the elders listened in silence as Kale and Alina recounted what had happened. Valen has gone too far, one of the elders said. He must be stopped. We will find him, Kale vowed. But we must be prepared. The artifact he possesses is powerful, and he will not hesitate to use it against us. Alina nodded, her determination unwavering. We'll face him together, she said, no matter what. As they left the grand hall, Alina felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges ahead would be difficult, but she knew that as long as she and Kale stood together, they could overcome anything. The artifact's energy lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. Alina could still feel its oppressive weight, a reminder of the danger they now faced. Valen's disappearance had left the Zorathian capital on edge, and the elders had declared a state of emergency. The Forbidden Zone, once a distant threat, had become the focal point of their fears. We need to understand what Valen is after, Alina said as she and Kale pored over ancient texts in the Grand Hall's archives. The room was filled with towering shelves of scrolls and holographic records, their surfaces glowing faintly in the dim light. Kale nodded, his golden eyes scanning the text before him. The artifact he took is known as the Shard of Dissonance, he explained. It is said to have the power to sever bonds, both physical and spiritual. If Valen learns to control it, he could destroy our connection. And worse. Alina's brow furrowed. Worse. The shard's power is not limited to bonds, Kale said grimly. It can disrupt the very fabric of our world. If misused, it could cause catastrophic damage. Alina's heart sank. We have to stop him before he figures out how to use it. Agreed, Kale said, but we cannot face him unprepared. We need to understand the shard's origins and how it can be countered. Their research led them to an ancient legend, one that spoke of a time when Zoreth was divided by war. The Shard of Dissonance had been created as a weapon, but its power had proven too great, and it had been sealed away in the Forbidden Zone. The legend also spoke of a counterpart to the Shard, a crystal known as the Heart of Harmony, said to balance its destructive energy. If we can find the Heart of Harmony, Alina said, her voice filled with determination, we might be able to neutralize the Shard. Kale nodded, but the heart is said to be hidden deep within the Forbidden Zone, in a place known as the Sanctuary of Echoes. Few have ventured there, and even fewer have returned. Then we'll be the ones to change that, Alina said firmly. The journey to the Sanctuary of Echoes was fraught with danger. The landscape grew increasingly hostile, the air thick with a strange metallic haze. The ground was littered with jagged rocks and twisted vegetation, and the sky above was a swirling mass of dark clouds. As they ventured deeper into the Forbidden Zone, they encountered strange creatures, beasts born of the Shard's chaotic energy. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their forms shifted and twisted, as if they were not entirely real. Stay close, Kale warned as they faced one of the creatures, his weapon glowing with energy. These beings are drawn to the Shard's power. They will not hesitate to attack. Alina nodded, her stun gun at the ready. Together, they fought their way through the creatures, their bond giving them strength and coordination. Each victory brought them closer to the sanctuary, but the toll was heavy. By the time they reached the entrance, they were both bruised and exhausted. The Sanctuary of Echoes was a massive structure, its walls carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they approached. The air inside was cool and still, filled with a faint melodic hum. This is it, Kale said, his voice filled with awe. The Heart of Harmony must be here. They moved cautiously through the sanctuary, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. The walls were lined with glowing crystals, their light pulsing in time with the hum. At the center of the sanctuary stood a pedestal, and on it rested a crystal of pure, radiant light. The Heart of Harmony, Alina whispered, her voice filled with reverence. As they approached the pedestal, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was an ancient Zorethian, his skin pale and his eyes filled with wisdom. You have come far, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. But the Heart of Harmony is not easily claimed. We needed to stop the Shard of Dissonance, Alina said. If we don't, Valen will use it to destroy everything. The ancient Zorethian studied them for a moment, his gaze piercing. The Heart of Harmony can only be wielded by those whose bond is true. Prove yourselves, and it shall be yours. The trial that followed was unlike anything they had faced before. The sanctuary seemed to come alive, its walls shifting and changing to create a series of challenges. They faced illusions that tested their trust, obstacles that required perfect coordination, and puzzles that demanded both logic and intuition. Through it all, Alina and Kale relied on their bond, their connection growing stronger with each challenge. When they finally reached the Heart of Harmony, the ancient Zorethian nodded in approval. You have proven yourselves worthy, he said. Take the heart, and may it guide you in your quest. As Alina reached out to touch the crystal, a surge of energy flowed through her, filling her with a sense of peace and clarity. She looked at Kale, her heart swelling with emotion. "We can do this," she said. Kale nodded, his golden eyes filled with determination. Together. Back in the city, the elders listened in silence as Alina and Kale recounted their journey. "The Heart of Harmony is a powerful artifact," one of the elders said. "But it is not a weapon. It must be used with care." "We understand," Alina said, "but we need to act quickly. Valen could strike at any moment." The elders exchanged glances, their expressions grave. "Then go," the lead elder said. "And may the ancestral stars guide you." As they left the grand hall, Alina felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges ahead would be difficult, but she knew that as long as she and Kale stood together, they could overcome anything.